everybody please turn off their cell phones?
Reshus Harav, Reshus Harabonim, Rabbi, and of course, Reshus HaMishpacha. There's no question that the passing of Moshe Dave Ben Meir, Zechreinu Livracha, was a tremendous shock, not just to the family, but all the people that knew him, and especially in our office in the CRC, how it affected our staff. And I would just like to make some remarks at this time of Shloshim of the type of feeling, at least the way I have felt and still feel, as to my relationship with him as the Menahil, as the executive director of the CRC, and of course as a close friend and colleague, and whatever description you'll have, the closeness that we maintained in our office. I would like to do that and use the vehicle of Psukim that we found yesterday in the Pasuk that was read yesterday in Parshas Vayetze, and it comes out to what would be called a rather extraordinary Hasidic interpretation of phrases which I believe would characterize the personality, at least this is the way I related to him, and I believe he related to others, especially to all of the people in our staff there at the CRC office. And I think that's the way he exuded that type of charm and personality to many people, and most of all, of course, to his family. When the Torah tells us, Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnaso, Yaakov awakened from his sleep, which is described in the beginning, he went to sleep in a certain place, and then when he awakened, Vayomer Ochein Yesh Hashem b'mochem hazeh, v'anochi lo yadati. In truth, Hashem is really in this place where I went to sleep, and I did not know. V'anochi lo yadati. So the key phrase in this interpretation, as I said, is a Hasidic method of interpretation based on a explanation of the great Hasidic leader, the Talmud of Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Ber Mimezrich Zal. He said that in the Pasuk that we find in Parshas Veschanan, which is the prelude to the giving of the Aseres Adibus, when it's repeated again in the Torah, in Parshas Veschanan, the Shabbos after Tisha B'Av, it's Shabbos Nachamu, and we hope that there shall be Nachamu, Tanchumim, coming out of this expression of our loss, and Chizuk to the family and to the entire community, because there Moshe Rabbeinu says, Anochi Omeid Bein Hashem Ubeinechem. Literally it means, I stand between you, Klal Yisrael, and between Hashem and all of you. So Reb Dave Ber gives this leap in using the words, the Pasuk, as a vehicle for expressing a very realistic idea. He says that Anochi Omeid Bein Hashem Ubeinechem. Anochi is a clear-cut word meaning I, ego. The only ego that exists really in the world that can't be challenged is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. When Hashem says, I am the Lord your God. That's the only ego. But when it comes to human ego as expressing itself in a very proud, sometimes it's an arrogant form, sometimes it's in an act of control, many times it's very abrasive. So that Anochi Omeid stands between Hashem Abeinechem. Stands between Hashem and the Jewish people and stands between human beings. Our ego many times prevents us from coming closer to Hashem. A person who has this overwhelming expression of I, and I am the one that is in control, and I am so great, and I express myself in such a way to control other people, and that's the way I appear to other people. So that stands between an element of Hashem, of spirituality. However, the pasuk that we read yesterday says Yaakov Avinu awakes and he says, "Ochein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh." Hashem is in this place, and you know why Hashem is in this place? Because ve'onochi lo yadati. I am not aware of my ego. I have controlled it in such a way that as a result of that, I do not become some sort of a stiff-necked, arrogant, puffed-up human being, but I am someone that am not aware of that type of ego. Now, in my relationship, with the Nifter, I found when he came through that door in my office, right next door when he moved the office, we had this daily relationship and so forth, and I believe I will utter the expression of many of the people in the staff. They didn't feel that they had over here a domineering, commanding, powerful, overbearing type of a CEO of a person in charge that was abrasive and that everybody in the staff had to tremble at his appearance, at his call, at his opening a door. Just the opposite. They're developed for the past few years, especially in his directorship, in his leadership in the office. It was a quiet one, it was a firm one, it was an assertive one. But Anochi lo yadati. We didn't know about this Anochius, this type of arrogance that sometimes afflicts many people who have higher positions of rule or command or directorship. There's much has been written about many people who are the CEOs of corporations, about international diplomats, and all types of people that somehow want to project their anochius, their ego, their control, that I am the individual. I have to have my picture all over the place. And you'll have to almost, it comes to that element of idolatry and of worship, of self-worship. But in my relationship with Moshe Zechenu Levracha, it was Anochi lo yadati. We didn't see, and I didn't feel any aspect of ego. Of course, he showed me respect according to my title and so forth, but I was really humble in his presence because that's the way he acted. And the office enjoyed that type of cooperation. It wasn't just a cooperation because we each had a task, and everybody in that office has a particular task that is laid out for them in the different departments of the work of CRC, but they all felt a sense that there was not this abrasive or irritating factor of someone who is literally, as we would say many times, cracking the whip, having people do this and do that, and doing all sorts of things, but was considered and careful. Anochi lo yadati. I did not know, was not aware, and that's the way he acted, that's the way I felt. That's the feeling I have after sort of summing up this loss of a few weeks ago. The Shloshim begin to feel it. That loss is there every day. But I understand a great memory, it's a lesson. It's a lesson, of course, in the family. I can't tell how all the inner workings and the emotions and the relationships and the family relations, and also between husband and wife and children and grandchildren and sons-in-laws and so forth. But what is important, I know that how I felt, and I believe our staff felt that this is a legacy that he left us. It's a great, important rule of midos, of great spiritual and behavioral attributes that this man walked in our community, served in many places, served in many capacities, and all the time he was pleasant demeanor, and especially did not project that type of overbearing, domineering personality. Anochi lo yadati. He was not aware of this anochius, of this terrible challenge sometimes that each one of us can suffer at one time. There's this big I, or so forth. They say in Hasidic annals, one Rebbe once said, he heard his grandson moving about. He says, "Where is Dorten? Who's down there?" So the child said, "Ich, I." So the grandfather said, "You're not supposed to say ich, I, and I'm the most important person when I'm calling upon you for a spiritual task or some other task that is important to the community." And this is what we have, and this is the legacy of Moshe Zal. So at this time, let us remember that this is a great legacy for the family, and particularly to the wife, to the spouse, to the children, and all the members of the family, to the members of the community, and especially to us in the CRC, who had daily contact with them in all situations, all types of pressures, all types of crises even. There was Anochi lo yadati. Tehei nafsho tzura b'tzura chaim amorcha Hashem Elokim dima mi'al kol panim.
Nearly 30 days has drawn to a close, yet closure has proven elusive. The emotionally wrenching moments of hope and despair, the sudden feeling of rudderlessness, of being lost and without direction. The friendship, the warmth, the love, physically gone, leaving behind only emptiness, a palpable void. This past month has been a Mar Cheshvan, a month of bitterness. This has been a Yerach Bul. We are baleh, emotionally, if not physically withered. We have experienced our own mabul. This has been our last 29 days. Tonight we begin the 30th day, and so we gather once again to mark this, the Shloshim of Harav Moshe Dov ben Meir, my father-in-law, Rabbi Moshe Kusher. When I refer to our last 29 days, I do so not because I wish to emphasize the length of time, the depth of my family's grief, or our ongoing struggle to cope with this new reality, but rather because, to a great extent, the word "our" refers to everyone here this afternoon. This has been our last 29 days. Often when we perform the act of Nichum Avelim, of comforting mourners, the sadness we feel is secondary or derivative in nature. We feel sorrow because the Avel, the mourner, whether our friend, our colleague, our neighbor, is suffering. So as Holchim B'drachav, as people who strive to act in a godly manner, we come to comfort, to articulate, even if not verbally, that we are here to provide solace, to provide support. The Shiva of my father-in-law felt very different. To be sure, throngs of people came from near and far. They came in person, by phone, by mail, both traditional and electronic, and by online posting, and they provided much needed support and comfort to the entire Kushner family. But this Shiva accomplished more. It served a wider purpose. Because while visitors came to offer condolences, they also came to find their own consolation. their grief, your grief, was not secondary. It was not derivative. It too was and is primary. It was and is personal. It's personal for all of us because we feel his loss intimately, as family, as friends, as students, as beneficiaries of all he offered to the world. One of the most heartbreaking tasks for me as a parent was to tell my children of their Zaydi's passing. Their interaction with their Zaydi was a sight to behold. After all those years at Mosheva, you can imagine the treasure trove of stories and antics their Zaydi had at his disposal to entertain my kids before bedtime. My children were unaware of the severity of their Zaydi's illness, only that Shlomit had been traveling to Chicago frequently to see him. Some days after Shiva, when asking my daughter Aden what she loved most about her Zaydi, she replied without hesitation, his magic. And while this might sound like the age-appropriate musings of a 5-year-old, Aden's insights belie her age. Magic tricks happened to be the staple of my father-in-law's Camp Mosheva recruitment spiel. I remember them as an 8-year-old boy at Torah Academy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He traveled the country on his annual Mosheva roadshows, visiting communities and encouraging families to send their children to camp. My father-in-law always visited the local day schools to expose the wonders of Mosheva to area children. His lead-in was always a magic trick, a surefire way to grab attention and generate excitement. As the years went on and I grew older, Rabbi Kushner's sleight-of-hand repertoire failed to expand, and the disjointed execution of his tricks became more humorous than amazing, but the presentation remained no less magical. The reason for this, I realized, was due to the man and not the magic trick. Parshat Truma, when describing the construct of the Aron in the Mishkan, states that the Aron was to be made of wood covered in gold, both mibayit u'mechutz, both inside and outside. Gemara Yoma Daf Ayin Bet Amud Bet states, mibayit u'mechutz tisapenu, Amar Rava, kol tamid chacham she'ein tocho kivoro, eino tamid chacham. Rabbi says, this teaches us that any scholar whose inside is not as his outside is not a true Torah scholar. I would often lovingly say about my father-in-law that he was wired backwards. Most of us do chesed out of obligation, out of guilt, or out of some combination of the two. And while we nonetheless feel the high that comes at the culmination of doing the chesed, we can't seem to get ourselves to repeat the action, the same chesed or a different one, on a regular basis. Rabbi Kushner literally lived to do chesed for others. Other than his family, chesed was his raison d'etre. Shortly before my family was to leave for my father-in-law's funeral, we were approached by a woman, unknown to any of us, who, with tears streaming down her face, proceeded to recount the myriad acts of chesed that my father-in-law had done as a friend when she had no friends, as an advocate for and in financial support of her and her young family when she suffered the most devastating of familial and financial crises. Clearly, my father-in-law was no magician and no illusionist. His wiring was no different than you and me. Harav Moshe Dov ben Meir's secret was that after internalizing the halachta bidrachav, he epitomized tocho kivoro. When it came to my father-in-law, the adage perception is reality rang true. At the core of his being was an unwavering authenticity that influenced his every action. It was the reason he could meet you for the first time and make you feel as if you were an old friend. It was the reason for when you reached to shake his hand, he would pull you closer to give you a hug. It was the reason he wouldn't hesitate to call out your name if he thought he had seen you from a distance, rather than take a pass and avoid the chance encounter. It was the reason he was so successful in imbuing his love of Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, and Torah Yisrael in his thousands of campers and students. One of his campers shared the following thought. For me, the news of Rabbi Kushner's passing came at a profound time. Like many, I spent the week leading up to his passing, thinking often of the passing of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, one of my greatest heroes. Moreover, this time of the year is the time that marks the yahrzeits of my most beloved Rebbeim, Rabbi Ugent, and Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel. I found it poetic, as a personal experience, that Rabbi Kushner died just after Rav Ovadia and in between the yard sites of my beloved Rabbeim. I had neither seen nor thought of Rabbi Kushner nearly as many times as I saw those three heroes. In fact, it's really just a small number of times that I even saw him over the last 20 years. But when I think of the impact he had, and when I think of the impactful people whom I've known, it is no overstatement to consider him in terms of those luminaries. You know better than I what camp meant to many children for whom it was their most Jewish experience of the year. You know how many people became frum or frummer, or moved to Israel because of their great experiences at Moshe. But the more uncelebrated, the more subtle contribution that camp had for some of my peers was the opportunity that it provided for Jewish leadership and a glimpse into a life of Jewish service. How many Rebbeim gave their first Dvar Torah at camp? How many communal leaders davened their first confident Musa from the Amud, or served as Gabbai first at camp? On October 18th in Buffalo, New York, a public bus driver, Darnell Barton, was navigating his usual route with a bus full of passengers when he spotted a woman standing outside a guardrail on a bridge passing over an expressway. Leaning and ready to jump, Barton stopped the bus. He called for help and then approached the woman. He asked the woman if she was all right. Getting minimal response, he slowly approached the woman and wrapped his arm around her while asking if she'd like to come back to the other side of the guardrail. She said yes. Both Barton and the woman then sat down on the sidewalk and waited together for police and firefighters to arrive. When asked what led him to take action, rather than continue down the road that day, Barton replied humbly, "If we want a better world, we have to be a part of it." My father-in-law, like Barton, believed that if we want a better world, we have to be a part of it. We know this charge as Tikkun Olam. And armed with the clarity of purpose he possessed from the synthesis of V'halachta b'drachav and Tilchot Kavora, he embraced both the wider non-observant Jewish community as well as the non-Jewish community with equal love and compassion. Yoni just want to send my condolences to you, Ima, Shlomit, Leora, and Noah, read a note to our family. Rabbi was my Jewish Abba. Hard for me. I loved him so much. He helped shape the man I am today. He would always call at Christmas time and say, "This is your Jewish Santa Claus wishing you a Merry Christmas." His spirit lives on in me. Many of you are familiar with the Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah that compares the Arba Minim, one of Rabbi Kushner's most beloved mitzvot, to the totality of the Jewish people. That despite their differences, they must be brought together as an agudah achat, a bunch or society, for only then is our true potential realized. As I explained to Rabbi Kushner, one person wrote, our daughter knew that one of the twins had serious heart defects and would require surgery soon after birth, and the rabbi was going to drive north for us. Immediately after the birth, I called the rabbi and explained what was going on and why we planned for a bris on the 8th day. Unfortunately, our daughter was not recovering as hoped, and the baby in distress was not doing well. We had to postpone the bris on a healthy child. After several conversations and consultations with Rabbi, we had to tell him the sad news that our grandson had passed on Shabbat and would be buried on Monday. Our daughter asked if there was any reason that the bris for our healthy grandson could not be done the same day of the funeral, since we had other family in town. Again, after consulting with Rabbi, we determined that we would do this and that our grandson, who survived 8 days, would also be entered into the covenant. I cannot express how comforting, helpful, and wonderful the rabbi was to me, my wife, and of course our dear daughter and son-in-law, and our entire family during this most difficult yet joyous time in our lives. He did a wonderful double mitzvah for all of us, and made sure that everyone present at the bris felt part of the process, and that we'd be able to celebrate life after a funeral for our other grandson. The letter goes on to say, I am sorry that I only knew this wonderful rabbi and true mensch for a short time. However, I will never forget him. As the consummate teacher, my father-in-law's final lesson and chesed may well have come after his passing. During the final days of Shiva, Yoni was asked if he was willing to receive the 8th grade boys from the Airy Crown Hebrew Day School along with their principal. Yoni agreed. And so these students witnessed their rabbi comfort his friend and learned firsthand what it meant to be Holchim Bidrachav. And so while my daughter Aiden and all of us here remember the magic of her Zaidi, it's my hope that as she, along with my sons Gaby and Jordy, grow older, they too will exhibit the magical traits of their Zaidi, and that, in part, due to his merit, Am Yisrael, as an Aguda Achat, will walk in the ways of God, Tocho Kavora. Tihei Nishmatot Tzura B'tzur HaChaim.
It's difficult to put in words my thoughts. And to describe the hole in our hearts. And I pray that I stay focused and composed. I believe I was asked to speak not because I had a very special relationship, I believe, with Moshe. Every morning we had this ritual. We come into the office. Best time to get work done is before the office open. Sometimes that, for me, meant 4 a.m. After leaving at 2 a.m., but I should come in with a big cup of something done with coffee. And depending on if his wife was on his case that week, either a carrot stick or a muffin. And we'd schmooze a lot about the office, the kids, his mother. So, felt very close. But I also think that really, today I'm here to represent the CRC and the staff. But I can tell you, when I walked away by Levaya, I told my wife, 2,000 people had the same feeling as I. Whether it was the 1,200 in the shul, the 1,000 on the video and listening in. So, went right to Mincha at the Shiva house. Got there one of the first ones, which allowed me to be one of the first to write down for the Mishnayos. It was a clean slate. So I was thinking to myself, which Masechta should I choose? Oholos? And I decided to take Pirkei Avos. And I'll tell you why. Not because it's the easiest, but because I once heard a medrash. I couldn't find it. If anyone knows where it is, I'd appreciate it. It said that when Avraham Avinu was nifter, everyone cried, even the kids. Because Avraham Avinu made it a point to even talk to the little kids. I decided to learn Pirkei Avos with my kids. When we went through Pirkei Avos, and I would point out different points in the Mishnah Mishnayos that related to Moshe. One of Moshe's points he used to talk about with the Gedolim, the Tzadikim, that made it a roshim on his life. He used to talk about the Hadras Panim of Rav Kook. He used to talk about when he was a kid, he had various jobs. One of his jobs were to deliver challahs on Friday on his bike. Yeah. As much as his basket could hold, that's what he would carry challahs. So one house he used to go to was Rabbi Goldsweig, the father, that's all. And he remembers walking in, Rabbi Goldsweig, in his talis and tefillin. And he had a minhag to read every word of the coming parsha, so that there wouldn't be mistakes that week. And that image, Rabbi Goldsweig, he was a very holy man, if anyone remembers him, going through word by word. He would give him 10 cents tip, he told me. Those were the memories. The Mishnah says, Oiv Shalom, Roidev Shalom, Oivas Abrius. Another Mishnah is Zeh Derech Toiva, Ayin Toiva, Chaber Toiv, Shochem Toiv, Leiv Toiv. You've heard so much about that. Ben Zoyna said, Ezeu Mechubed, who's considered someone that's Mechubed? HaMechabed is Abrius. And Kol HaMechabed is Ateragufei, Mechubed al Abrius. One particular Mishnah which I thought identifies Moshe's essence. Mishnah Parakeh, Talmid of Avraham Avinu, the Mishnah is describing Ayin Toiva, Ruach Menucha, Nefesh Shefala, like Rav Schwartz explained, an undemanding soul. That was the essence. And it was a good lesson for our family as we learned these Mishnayos together. But as I said, I'm here representing the CRC, the office. We've had many meetings in the house. We call them RC meetings, other meetings. Yom Ha'atzmaut, my office was absolutely plastered with Israeli flags. He felt it his life mission to get me to say Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut. I, in turn, gave him an extra black hat. And we used to go at it in a good way. He was a very emotional boss. He took everything to heart. Whenever Nios was hired to help him out with the trucking, made it a point to let him know how the Bears were doing, especially when they were playing the Packers, because a lot of plants are up in Wisconsin. You have to know how to shlach them up there in Wisconsin. And everyone remembers Kusher Fest. Welcome to Chicago was his signature cry. As a matter of fact, last week was Kusher Fest. And after the morning minyan, someone just got up and said, remember Rabbi Kusher? He used to be a big active person in this minyan. And he said a couple words after Shacharis, unplanned, just a pure emotion. I asked a few of the people in the office to put some words down, so I'm going to read some short words from some of the members in the office. First from Rabbi Reese, Shlita. Rabbi Reese, who recently came to our office, to the CRC. He writes, amongst other things, as my family was moving to Chicago, he made sure to inform me that he could be reached at any time for any reason in order to assist us in our move, and he was true to his word. he himself did in Mitzvah by Yosem Yibshluchai. What I remember most was his warmth, his laughter, his affinity for a good story, especially about Gedolei Yisrael. Mrs. Myers wrote about Rabbi Kusher being a lively and active executive director, especially taking interest in her family. She wrote that when Rabbi Schwartz was redoing his personal library in the summer several years ago, Rabbi Kushner contacted Nehemiah to assist in the Rav's son in all the schlepping. Nehemiah was indebted to Rabbi Kushner forever for the close contact to the Rav and for all of the hands-on learning in carpentry. Rabbi Schwartz continues to amaze us every day in the office. If you want to know French, Nehemiah also benefited from seeing the warm, loving relationship that the Rav had for Rabbi Kushner, as if he was the Rav's son. However, beyond all of the above, Rabbi Kushner was a very good listener. Sachs talks about one time the paychecks were going to be late, and he was worried that maybe not everyone in the office would have enough to go shopping. So he offered to lay out money until the paychecks would be ready so people can go shopping. Rabbi Eisenbach remembers how the Abbas Abanim citywide event was a great point of satisfaction for him. And he writes, Rabbi Eisenbach, he was also concerned with my well-being, even to the point that he would call my parents. And I can attest to that. He would call my wife all the time to make sure I was behaving. And very neat, Mrs. Cohen talks, she has a very special relationship. She writes, for the first 7 years that she worked at the CRC, she was single and unattached. This personally pained Rabbi Kushner in a way that was unusual for a boss and employee, but in a way was perfectly keeping with his personality. I would constantly hear from people I knew that had run into Rabbi Kushner that he brainstormed with them how she can find her basher. Rabbi Kushner strenuously defended the people he knew, and she ends off so correctly, the work, the organization, and the world will go on, but it's a very different place. What should I say? It hurts. I envisioned a very different ending. Rabbi Kushner was going to retire soon. We talked about dancing at Yoni's wedding and all the various things. With Rabbi Kushner, we would talk about ideas, and I knew the next day he'd run it by his wife, Zip, and nothing was okay until he got the okay from his very, very smart wife. It's a shock. It hurts. I'll just share with you what I find a little bit of a nechama. It's actually something that I heard on Shabbos from Rabbi Plotnick in Shul. The Ramban says that when Yaakov told Rachel, "Asachas Elokim Anochi," so Ramban said that Chazal took Yaakov, or whatever that means, to task. How do you speak to a woman in pain? There's going to be a time where your children, Leah's, the Shloshim, are going to stand in front of Yaakov instead of Yosef, in front of Yosef. So the shaila is, what's the midah keneged midah? What is the connection? So he brought down that Shmuel Berenbaum once lost a very close relative by the Levaya. He said he didn't understand. We find 2 times where Chazal say that the Shemayim opened. One was by Matan Torah, that Klal Yisrael needed to see the Shekhinah so the Shemayim opened. That's understandable. But the first time actually was when Yitzchak was on the Akedah, and Shemayim opened, and we know what happened. The tears flew down and hit Yitzchak's eyes. What was the purpose of that? So Reb Shmuel Berenbaum said, and he was talking about it was actually the Levi of his own son, that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted the Malachim to see, to have empathy, and to see in Shemayim there's pure clarity. There are no questions. Famous story of the Ramban, who was talking to his Talmud who was on his deathbed, and he said, I'm giving you a kameya. That this kameya is going to get you into all of the places in Shemayim where you'll be able to ask questions that I don't understand about life. Please go up and come back to me in a dream and tell me the answers. So a couple days later, the Talmud came back and said, Rabbi, Itaka got in, but I don't remember the questions. There are no questions here. Everything is besimcha. There's pure clarity. So the answer to Yitzchak was, there's going to come a time in history where the Malachim aren't going to understand why do they need the Torah. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted the Malachim to have empathy, to understand that there's confusion in the world, there's sadness in the world, there's questions in the world. They have no inkling of what that means, and that was what the understanding there. So Ray Plotnick explained has to do with, that's the Midah K'neged Midah, that Yaakov, who had the clarity, didn't have the empathy, so to say. Therefore, there's going to become a time where Yosef says the same to them, you don't have the same for Binyamin, you say even a little deeper perhaps. That was the moment of pure clarity, but the small nechama that I took away from this, I'll just share with you, was that we're hurting a lot. That's life. That's how the world was created. There will be a time in the very near future that we'll be rejoining with Moshe. There'll be a time just like Moshe has now clarity, if we can use the word besimcha. There'll be a time Hashem will wipe away the tears from our face. Thank you.
And his daughter got up to speak at the beginning of the party. She said something that made an incredible impact on me. This man, I was very close with him in the shul, had a lot of trouble walking. And she said that most of us at the party had just recently met this person, the last few years of his life. She said, you don't know, my father was a track star when he was in high school and college. You met him when he was 82, 85. You didn't see a track star. You saw an old man who couldn't walk. Everybody has different experiences and different interactions with people. My experiences, not from the office, as was so eloquently mentioned, not from Camp Moshava, so explained in so much detail and had such a profound effect on people. My experience with Moshe was in shul, was in the office here in shul, was in shir, and was at brisson. And I'd like to explain what I mean. I always wanted to be a moil. I modeled our two children. And when there was a bris milah, I was always standing very close to the moil, to the baby. And I don't even know when it started. But first time Moshe did a bris, I don't remember where it was. I don't remember when it happened. And I said, or he said, Nizgalo HaTorah. And that became our code word. Nizgalo HaTorah means the skin was removed and the crown was revealed. Nizgalo HaTorah. And from that time on, whenever there was a bris, I had to say Nizgalo HaTorah. That was our relationship when it came to bris milah. Galo HaTorah. The crown was revealed. As people mentioned, it's unbelievable. Leil Shabbos, when he was nifta, was Parshas Lech Lecha. Torah's description of bris milah. Not only bris milah, but bris milah to children, to family. Yilid Beischa, Kol Zocha. His Mesiris Nefesh for Brisim, his love for Brisim, his love for his family, his excitement that it ain't equals bris. His excitement in Brisim in general. And those people who davened in the shul knew when he came in with the tie, it was excitement in general for all of us. It was his sign to all of us. I don't remember when he started with that sign either. But everybody always looked for his tie, which meant that he was a moil and we had no tachna. His levaya was on Vayera, which starts off with bris milah. Maybe that was in his Galo HaTorah. His crown was revealed. Person's nifta Parshas Lech Lecha and is buried on Yom Rishon of Parshas Vayera and he's a moil. Sunday morning, in between the Petira and the Kfura, was very challenging. It was a long night, Motzei Shabbos. But we had a shir Sunday morning, Daf HaShvua. And Moshe had not missed every Sunday morning for 5 years. And there wasn't a shir where we didn't have interaction. As a matter of fact, I believe someone who listens to the shirim online said that he feels like he's a participant and he's a friend of Rabbi Moshe, because it was mentioned in every shir. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the shir, I got so overcome with emotion because we started off on Daf Pei, and we turned to Daf Pei Aleph. And Pei Aleph, I don't know why it happened in the middle of the shir, but Pei Aleph is Gematria Moil. Zap Gematria Moil. Maybe it was in his Galo HaTorah, his crown was revealed between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. In the office, he expressed to me so many times his incredible love for his family. His incredible love for Klal Yisrael. And his incredible love for bris milah. When bris milah was under attack, Metzitza B'Peh, it was Rabbi Moshe who really gathered the troops. He got the moyalim, he got the doctors, he got the rabbonim. We went to meetings and meetings and meetings, and he really had a big yad, a big hand in pushing it through, making sure no one started up with bris milah. But I have to tell you that probably the most emotional meeting we ever had, whenever he called me, asked me to meet him in the office, it was very often emotional. I want to say this in front of Rabbi Schwartz Shlita. When he told me that Rabbi Schwartz Shlita was going to get married, he was incredibly emotional. And when he told me that he was going to be the Masada Kedushin, I mamish had to hold him up. I had to hold him up. His ability to be Meikir Rabbanim, his uncanny ability to be Mechabe them, honor them, that's the thrust for his book that he was in the middle of, Sefer he was in the middle of. But I have to tell you that when he walked to the front of the shul, and he came to tell Rabbi Schwartz Shlita that he was going to give him a ride home, you would think that the person was mamish davening the Elah for the Yomid in front of 10,000 people. Such hachno, such kavod, incredible limud. And any time that there was such an interaction, it was the same way. Same way. He had such simcha in the shul. He used to love to bring the lulav and esrog. Not that there were that many people who needed one anymore, but there was a time in shul when the shul had a lulav and esrig, and everybody used a lulav and esrig, and he would bring a lulav and esrig, even if only one person didn't have a lulav and esrig. He put it down on the bima on the first day yontif, and in case anybody had a problem with their lulav and esrig, he would bring extra lulavim or hadassim, and he would fix people's lulavim and esrogim. He loved the mitzvah. Everybody remembers those gigantic things he wore over his eyes. He was checking everybody's lulavim and esrogim. He loved to be the candy man in the back of the shul. Rabbi, I have to tell you that I have a unique perspective as many Rabbanim do. See, a Rav has a very dangerous job. Everybody is looking at him. But he has a very big mila because he has the ability to look at everybody else. And when Moshe stood at the bima, under the talus, surrounded by all the children of the shul for kol ha'orim, and he would make that bracha under the bima. It was Nizgalo on Torah. The crown was uncovered. The crown was uncovered. We were the recipients of watching that crown so many times and in so many ways being uncovered. As was said, he was proud to be a Jew. He loved to be a Jew. And he always wanted to be even a better Jew. And he always wanted all Jews to be better Jews as well. I don't know what this means, Rabbi. I asked my son if I could say it over. But since Rabbi Schwartzleiter started off by saying a Hasidic word, I'd like to end with a gematria. Bris, Milah, and Moil together equal the gematria of 778. Nizgalo HaTorah equals the gematria of 777. Together with Moshe, they were all the same. The shul, his love for Klal Yisrael, his love for mitzvahs, his love for his family. His love for his family. He created this HaTorah, this incredible, beautiful HaTorah. My last conversation with him, face to face, was in his home on Erev Yom Kippur, when he was doing probably something he loved to do more than anything else. He was Skyping his grandson, preparing his laning. He was telling him to do a better job. Last conversation I had with him was when he was in the hospital and they put the phone near his ear, and we wished each other good yontif. And the last time I saw him was when he was surrounded by family in a situation of sakana gedoyel ad ma'od. But he looked so peaceful. He led a life in the city of Chicago for so many years that created a beautiful HaTorah. The families, the shul, CRC, and the entire city have to remember to take that HaTorah, hold it high, and continue to create more beauty for that crown. Should be zeicha, no more tsar. Family should be zeicha to simchas. He should be a melitz yosher. Moch Hashem dimam yal kol ponim. We should only know simchas hatzlacha.